So welcome everybody to our Q&A with Jeffrey Straker. Jeffrey, welcome to At Home Songwriting. Welcome back, I should say.
Yes, thanks for having me back. I am delighted to be here.
Absolutely. So Jeffrey, last time we talked, we talked a lot about your history. We talked a lot about sort of how you developed as a musician, taking piano lessons, and then moving into more of a creative writing scene and deciding I'm going to go full time. And now 16, 17 years later, you're still cranking out the music. So what have you, first off, let's start off what you've been up to like in the since the last time we talked, which is about a month ago. So what's the last month look like?
Well, relevant to a group of songwriting musicians, I've been spending a lot of time writing. My last full-length record was out, was completed in May of 2020, ended up being released May 2021 due to the pandemic. And so by May 2023, I feel basically obsolete. So I need a new recording because I tour so much. And as I tour, it's really important to have the new songs to play off the new album because one does still sell copies of these things in CD or vinyl on the road. And so, yeah, you want to keep sending new offerings out to festival directors, etc. So a lot of writing, and since I talked to you, and also a lot of shows, it's become really busy. Just we're not yet in festival season, just like venues and folk clubs and arts councils, even some house concerts. It's been really nice.
Awesome. So like I said, this is Q&A. So everybody, if you want to ask questions, you can put it in the chat, and I can ask for you. Or if you want to raise your hand, use the reactions function and hit raise hand, and then I'll call on you and you can talk to Jeffrey as well. I know that some of our members of At Home Songwriting are looking to, possibly consider going into music full time and making it their career as well. So what questions do you all have for Jeffrey today? Adam.
Hey, Jeffrey. Hey, Chad. Jeffrey, thanks for doing this. And Chad, thanks as always.
For sure.
Chad, you're frozen. Am I frozen? Who's frozen?
Oh,
I think just Chad's frozen.
I think it's just me. Hold on. You go ahead, ask your question.
Cool. Jeffrey, I'm doing the same thing that you did way back when. Just one day I said, I've had enough. And as my money cushion dwindles, I mean, there is money being pulled in, but I guess my question is, what was your first line of defense when you did this? Because I did watch the interview with you, and like I said, it did sound very similar to what I'm doing right now. I'm in New York City, if that helps. But yeah, what was your first line of defense? You don't have to tell me if you had what kind of money you had saved up, whether you did or you didn't. Eventually, you had to string it together, make it
Yeah.
work.
No, it's a good question. I mean, I gave my when I started, like I left my job and I did have like a bit of money saved, but not a ton, honestly. And I also kind of I wanted to try to not touch it because I wanted to see like how viable is this, or is this viable? Like I didn't know the answer to that, because it's different for everybody. And so I went out. I had this little CD I'd made of 10 folk songs, piano folky songs, and um, I would play. My phrase was I would play for the opening of an envelope. Like I would play anywhere I could possibly play. Like, and I'd cold call people and play, and I did a lot of gigs. And in that first year, like I didn't make a ton of money, but I made enough that I could see the potential in it. So I was that first year I was begging and borrowing, stealing. I'd put all my stuff into storage. I was staying with friends on a friend had a room in a basement. A friend had a spare room. I was doing that kind of thing, not eating fancy food. And I kind of just sort of made it work, like the gigs were making a little bit of money. Everything was like breaking even basically. But this was better. Like the revenue was better than it was when I was doing half-time job, half music. So I could see that the more time I put into this, the kind of better it got. So I was willing to grit my teeth and sort of see how it would go for the next couple of years, and it gradually did get better. I could sort of slowly see audiences building. You know, a few more people were coming back to shows, and I was some of just the guarantees were getting gradually better for gigs, and it would, and if there wasn't a show, if the show didn't have a guarantee, it was like a door deal type thing. A few more people were showing up and paying at the door, and it just gradually got better. It's funny, I can look back at my I mean, when you do this as an independent or like a sole proprietor, whatever you call them in the US, like running your own business, I keep pretty good spreadsheets, and I look at the revenue over time. Like it's not like it did this, you know, it was more like this, and I kind of learned and I learned I'm like a slow and steady guy. Like I'm not looking for a hit. I never was. I knew that wasn't the kind of musician I was. I thought I'm a slow burn person, and I think I'm in it for the long game. And it was very gradual, but it did work. So I never did like dip into some thing or have like a wealthy uncle bail me out. You know, it just gradually worked.
That's good. Awesome. Any follow-up questions to that, Adam?
One of the things, Jeffrey, that I'm super impressed about is that you not only just went into this overnight, but you vowed to only do your own songs. So you just cold called everything, everywhere, anything, every bar, every museum, every restaurant. You just blanketed it, and that was your first. Would you say? I know I keep using this expression, your first line of defense. Obviously, you said you cut down on some expenses, which is just practical because you wanted to put music first, and you were willing to. Obviously, we're all willing to eat ramen noodles if the rest of the day we're spending doing something we love way more than what we did before, no matter how much that paid. Um,
But yeah, I would say, yeah, first line of defense was that then. That's a great. I see what you mean. Like that's a great way of rephrasing it for me to make sure I got what you're saying. But yes, I cold called everywhere because no one had heard of me, you know. So I had to like introduce them to me via a couple fairly, at the time, like the video quality then wasn't what it is now. So, I was giving them some kind of sketchy kind of videos just to give them a sense of what I did, describing my genre, who my kind of target audience probably was, like who I pictured sitting in the room. And I cold called everything, like you said it, museums, restaurants. My music doesn't really work in bars, but there's a couple kind of places where it would work, drinking places. So I did call them. Halls, arts councils. Now, so you're right. That was definitely it. Like, and the administrative part of what I do was and remains, unfortunately, a big chunk of the time. Like, it consumes a lot of my time because of that. Like, at first, the administrative time was finding people to believe in me, to book me. And I mean, as time has gone on, it's still the same amount of administrative, like, percent of my time. It just shifted to other things. So that's one thing everyone should brace themselves for in doing this, is like, it's probably like 30% music, 70% business, unfortunately. But just, it's kind of how it goes. And I've heard other people say the same thing.
I've heard the saying that business is a longer word than music. So that's how it goes. Pierre, you had your hand raised as well.
All right, Jeffrey, I'm a neighbor. I'm living in Winnipeg. So
Woohoo!
we are neighbors. I got to represent Canada. So when I saw Jeffrey's on, I made sure I got to be here today. So great interview with Chad before. I got a few questions. So you're living in Regina full time. And so the typical question, why not Toronto or BC?
I did. That's a great question. So why not the big music cities of Canada? So I did live in Toronto for the longest time, based myself in Toronto. But honestly, what I discovered, and I think everyone in Toronto just realizes this, every musician, is that though there are lots of musicians there, very few, if any of them, are earning their living there. You can only play, even though there's 5 million people in that city or whatever it is, depending on how you draw the border. Like, you can only play in that area so many times before you can't get booked again by another venue because you just played, sort of. And also, the guarantees in Toronto just aren't great. And what I found is that you can play an awful lot of gigs in smaller centers with better guarantees. I'm born in Saskatchewan, so it was kind of a natural progression for me to get back here. The cost of living is astronomically lower than Toronto. I have my own house here. It cost a tenth what a house would cost in Toronto. You know the deal. So that's kind of why. And honestly, Vancouver, no slight to Vancouver, the scene is almost dead in Vancouver. There's not a lot going on there in terms of venues to play at. I mean, there are lots of there's good musicians there. There's no venues in Vancouver.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, so Jeffrey, so you self-represent, no agent, no manager. You're there.
I do have an agent. I do have an agent. Yeah, I've had an agent for a very long time, for about 13 or 14 years of this time I've been doing this. And it's a funny story how that came to be. It's Paquin, who's interestingly based in Winnipeg,
Okay.
and Toronto. I've been in and out of manager relationships, which I'm happy to talk about with people. They've generally not worked. Much like we all know, the divorce rate amongst relationship couples is about 60 to 65% in North America. It's even worse amongst musicians and their managers. But the agent thing is interesting. Like I sound like I'm from the Jurassic era to put our minds in this context. But when like back 17 years ago, my first record was pretty folky. The next one I worked with a producer who was kind of more poppy, and this song on this record, like, this couldn't even happen nowadays. It just like kind of got on the radio. Like, how the heck does that even happen? And we made this video for it for like $1,000, and it got on national rotation in Canada on Much Music, and it got to number 6 in the Canadian charts. The whole thing is absurd. Anyway, an agent saw my video on Music Video TV, and phoned my phone, like, you know, literally called my phone and was like, "We want to represent you." And I was like, "Why?" And and they're like, "Well, you know, obviously things are happening. Your video's number 6 on the national charts." And I was like, "Okay," you know. And luckily, they took a bit of a gamble on me, but they stayed with me. And as time passed, as I mentioned to the first fellow, like slowly, as gigs got better and better and better, you know, they've been with me in that relationship.
Okay. And now, when you're playing your gigs, are you backed up, or is it just you and your piano for the most part? What's your deal?
Oh, and I meant to talk to Adam about this too. So, being a solo singer-songwriter, like me, all my songs are written Jeffery and a piano. I can kind of surround it with anything. It works solo, it works duo, works trio, works with the band. I'm finding these days, but to go back to Adam's question, one of the ways I cut corners when I first started was, or not cut corners, one of the ways I made it work was that I was doing a lot of shows solo. Then what I kind of realized, like, to fill up the sound a little bit and kind of, you know, maybe help out trying to get booked at a festival or something, I added in either an upright bass player or an acoustic guitar player to make a duo out of it, someone who could probably sing harmonies. I did notice that really helped get bookings that I wasn't getting before, you know, so I kind of grew it a bit. But it's funny, I did grow it to be doing a lot of band shows. Over time, actually what I've learned for my stuff, which is story-driven, folky songs, a duo works so well. Me, piano, vocals, and an acoustic guitar player who can sing some harmonies. He's in Regina here, and it works in clubs. It works in festivals. It works. We did a show in a theater on Saturday night. It worked just fine. And the night before, we did a concert in a garage, like the same duo, worked just fine for 35 people. You know, so I found that works really well.
Wow. And I saw you just recently played with one of my heroes, Jack Semple from Regina.
Yeah. That was a benefit concert.
Awesome.
And that's another thing, going back to like these, like, who will book me type things. I've whittled down the number of benefit shows that I do versus when I first started. But what a great way to have people get to hear you who otherwise wouldn't hear you, getting on the bill in a benefit show. You know, you're kind of giving yourself away or getting some kind of an honorarium. And over time, I've tried to do less and less, you know, giving away the art for free. But especially at the start, I was really willing to do it, and it really did get ears on my stuff. And Jack was in that show, and he was great.
Awesome. And just to wrap up, because I've asked a lot of questions, but now let's say for someone who doesn't want to go full time, could you share some insight into your, like, the creative process, the songwriting kind of things that you could just, you know, either beginners, intermediate songwriters, you know, something that, you know, would inspire us?
Well, I mean, I get inspiration from the weirdest, so I shouldn't say the weirdest, the most unexpected places, right? Inspiration comes up at the most, almost inopportune times, because I don't have time to finish the idea. So what I make sure I do, one thing I really do, is I record a voice memo as much as I can, or type lyrics as much as I can, and I have a folder in my phone that says, "I'll get to this." And when I do have time to sit at my piano and develop something, the first thing I do is go into that folder, and I have a starting point. And there's pros and cons to it. I mean, the con is that you're not there with that spark in the moment. The pro is sometimes you go back to these ideas that seem great in the moment, and you go back to it, and you're like, this is kind of a dumb idea, and the distance from it can help that, right? So, but I found it to be fairly effective, and I just wrote a few songs in the last few weeks that came from my I'll get to it folder.
Nice. Are you going to be coming to Winnipeg anytime soon?
I am in November.
All right. Thank you. I've asked a lot of questions. Thank you very much. Look forward. I will be there. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we did have a question in the chat, and Jeffrey, I don't know how much you work in sync, but Lumilla asked, she's a songwriter with no interest in performing, but would like to submit songs to music supervisors for TV and film. She says, do you think she needs an agent to get her music, before decision makers? First question is, do you work in kind of that sync realm at all with your songs, or what's your experience there?
I've had some songs placed. Now it's not like, and it's been kind of a range of things. Like I've had a couple placed in films, like Canadian films, and I've had a couple used in Canadian TV shows, and they've all kind of come about by people who knew of me reaching out to me. And now the ones that I did get, and I haven't got a ton, I'll say I probably got like, I don't know, maybe over the whole time, like 10 or something. But it's really funny. I've also pitched my stuff to supervisors over time and just had no luck. Like, I just feel like I've been lost in the clutter, Now I have musical friends and, acquaintances who have had more luck than me. A gal I know in Winnipeg, her name is Jaylene Johnson. She's now more of a Christian, writing Christian singer-songwriter type music. And even when she wasn't sort of defining herself as a Christian writer, it was more like, I'll say folk pop, but with positive messages. She cold called some supervisors, and she had a fair bit of luck, I don't know. Personally, don't know anybody who used an agent. I think people typically what they do is they get lists of music supervisors who are working, who will always say they are open to receiving new material, because it's how that business runs. And people I know who have been successful have kind of cold sent and had some luck. But I'm also admittedly not the most experienced at this.
And I think just from like last week, we had Matthew Griswold on, who is actually signed with Universal, and he makes his living through sync. I think he does a lot of his own vocals. He's doing his own stuff. And I think if you're only a songwriter within the sync realm, I think you may have to align yourself with another artist or another collaborator that is a performer, because I do think you will need to have that delivery method. Because I think with sync, it's a little bit different than the like the publishing world where you're pitching to artists. In that world, you could be a songwriter and you could pitch something and someone could cut it. But I think in sync, they're looking for more of a finished product. So hopefully that might answer some of that question.
Yeah, I've actually been working with Musiversal. I don't know if you've heard of it. Musiversal is based in Portugal, but they employ musicians and audio engineers and the like all over the world. So it's kind of an arbitrage. It costs much less to get professional recordings with professional musicians than it would generally in the United States. So I am getting the songs, sung and produced in a way that would meet the sync requirements. And, and I can sing, I have a pretty good voice, but it's not professional quality. And I agree with you, for sync, if sync is a different level of quality that they're expecting, as opposed to a demo for someone in Nashville. Or
there's a guy by the name of Michael Elsner, I think is his name.
Yep.
I went to a workshop with him, and I thought he had really great advice on how to reach out to music supervisors. So I would check out what he has to offer for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I just found him on YouTube and watched one of his videos. I think it'd be good to take one of his workshops. Seems like.
He knows his stuff, and I liked a lot of his approach to how he thinks about contacting people, because there's definitely an art to being
Packaging it the right way.
professional. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Jay, you had your hand raised.
Thanks, Chad. And thank you, Jeffrey, so much for lending us your time.
Mhm.
At the risk of boring everyone, I want to kind of dig down a little bit into your insights on some things. So, from my perspective, a lot of the things that I do exceptionally well with that most don't, or because I don't do things in the way they do it or see it in the way they do, or I identify things that I can do that most don't seem to be able to do. So I'm curious, with you being a working musician, which congratulations, that's amazing. Even the absurd manner in which you found your agent, congratulations on that as well. I'd be curious as to whether you perceive yourself to have any innate skills, like a predisposition, so to speak, for accounting and keeping rhythm, or a natural ability to hear pitch that allows you to kind of develop progressions more abnormally or atypically from the average writer. I'm kind of wondering what it is that may, from your thought process, set you aside from those who have attempted to become working musicians and kind of helped you be positioned to, live your life, live your dream.
Huh. So I'll tell you the first thing that pops to mind. It's an interesting question. I think what I've learned over it's like 17 years I've been doing this as my work. I'm a singer songwriter, and they're like roots folk story driven songs, and people are interested in the words, and the melodies too. But they want to know the story. I think what I've learned and what I am doing is that it is all about connection. And I've really honed in on that and thought about that and practiced that and worked on that in terms of connecting with an audience, connecting with the listeners in the song that I write and in the delivery of the song in the show. And I learned a lot about like bantering and talking between my songs and what that should be. Have you guys heard of the performance coach Tom? Is it Jackson? Have you heard of the guy? Yeah, that's the guy.
Says yes.
Yeah. So of course there's an art to crafting the song, but then there's an art to delivering it and making it land. And really, I think what I worked on and learned over time through a lot of trial and error was I've learned, and I think I've become kind of good at it, like not to toot my own horn, but like I've really worked at it, at really focusing on making my song land with the audience. And some, of course, by their very nature of the way they're crafted, land better than others. But you can really do a lot in a room, like by the way you perform it, by making it land. And I really think that's the thing that has helped me build audiences the most over time. I mean, there's another part of it which is totally not musical that I think I do kind of decently, and it is like it's the promo side of it. I'm a relentless promoter. You can't like be braggy about yourself, really. Although we all have to brag a little bit. Like we have to be our own biggest fan, and you can't make people sick of you. But it's finding that line between, too much and enough, and just getting yourself out there as much as you can. I had this thought recently in that regard where I was like, I have a new video on YouTube of a live performance of a song that I just wrote. It performed it as a trio on YouTube: piano, upright bass, and guitar. And I thought, why don't I promo this? Why don't I buy some Google ads behind this video? And why don't I promote it to all the cities where I want to play folk festivals? Like, I've never done this before. And at least people in those cities will then have a better chance of seeing the video. So the artistic directors of those festivals. And then I was like, today I was like I'm trying to do my taxes. And of course my brain is thinking about this. I thought, well, why wouldn't I geo-target some Facebook ads to those same communities? Because Facebook ads are cheap. Someone can watch your song for like 5 cents. Anyway, so like I'm constantly thinking about writing songs, and I am constantly thinking about promoting them. And And R.I.P. Gordon Lightfoot, he passed away last night, and
Mm.
he said he once he got the songwriting bug, it consumed him for the rest of his life. Like, he could not stop thinking about writing and getting his songs out there. So hearing that quote today just made me think that I'm not some kind of freak show. That I really think like the relentlessness of that has to be a part of you. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense, and it honestly strikes a chord with me. And much to the credit of Gordon Lightfoot, and I did not know that. Rest in peace to him as well. Um, you know, I feel that if you're going to create a deliverable and it's going to connect with someone in the way that music should, that if it's not inviting enough that it needs to be demanded by the recipient, then that's something that I likely didn't give enough appreciation to previously. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I just want to ask you one more follow-up question, if I could. You've seen the landscape as it's been post-COVID and how saturated things have become. And so, of course, a saturated market presents challenges, but from my perspective, being relatively new the past few years, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I'm not seeing, having the lack of experience and coming at it from the saturation end. I'm wondering from you whether or not there's things that you see that may be strengths that many of us, viewing the weaknesses, may be overlooking.
And when you say saturated, are you meaning like online or live, or just help me understand that a little
So,
bit better?
no, that's a fair question. I appreciate it. I feel as though generally there's been so many new people coming in with me as I've been learning about songwriting, as I've been learning about producing, and it seems like everywhere I've been, a whole new class has been there with me, and that's great to a large extent. But some people are wanting to get out there like right now, and they feel very challenged. Fortunately, I don't feel that burden, but I'm curious as to, in the future, some strengths I may be able to pull that I may not have recognized in myself that you, in your experience, may.
I mean, one thing I think I've seen over the last 8 to 10 months is that I really think there is a substantial chunk of audience out there who really wants to experience live music. Like, they almost got so tired of everything streaming that there's a lot of people out there wanting to experience live music. And going back to shows, like I've done shows over the last, say, over the last month, they've had decent audiences, and it's really nice to see. And I know several singer-songwriters experiencing this. So getting out there is certainly possible. There's a tidbit that's popping to my mind that when I was really on the fence about do I try to do this full time, or do I stay in my job and do it part time, or what do I do? I went to this thing called Date with a Tape, like with a cassette, in Toronto, and the guest was Sylvia Tyson, and as in Ian and Sylvia, as in Four Strong Winds, and she was there, and it was in this venue called the Rivoli, and there's this hallway between the performance space and the bathroom, and I kind of positioned myself where, like, when she went to the bathroom, she'd have to walk through me. So I kind of cornered her, and I was like, first of all, I like foolishly, like not knowing what, I was like, hey, I have this song, like, do you want to hear it? And she said, oh, and she very friendly said, actually, I don't perform other people's songs. Thank you for offering this to me, but I'm really just performing my own songs. But tell me about yourself. Told her about my dilemma, and she said, let me tell you something. She said, after all my years in this business, the wisdom I would impart to you is that there are very few people who have the stomach to stick with it. And she said, longevity is actually one of the most crucial, like the power to persist, or the ability to persist, or the stupidity, or whatever it is the most important tool. And honestly, over the last 17 years, I think what I've seen is exactly what she said. And then kind of related to that, last thing I would say is, I did take some singing lessons for only a couple of years in Toronto, because I was like an okay singer, but I wanted to improve it a bit, And the singing teacher has since become a really good friend of mine. And she said to me not long ago, she said, I think you started going out and performing before you were ready. What do you think? And I said, part of me wants to say you're partly right, but part of me thinks if I waited till I was ready, I'd still be waiting. Because I, like, what is ready? So you mentioned these people itching to get out there and do it. Yeah, I totally get it. If you feel like you have something to say in your songs and you really believe in them, go sing them. You find out pretty quick in a room of people if you might, like I thought they were worth hearing. I quickly found that some people thought some of them were worth hearing and some of them weren't. But there's only one way to find out. I guess that's the only thing I would say. There's one way to find out.
That's awesome. Tap into your tenacity, your intestinal fortitude, and and trust your gut. That's great, man.
Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, those were great questions, Jay. No, I think Jeffrey, I think in any skill or any business, there's a ton of people that start. There's not a lot of people that take it the long distance, and I think that's super great advice. Because the people that actually end up doing more are the ones that just keep that consistency and keep it going. So yeah, great advice. Judith or Juju Beats in the chat said, did you focus on songwriting during the pandemic, and were you able to keep productive and earning during the really bad pandemic time?
My approach to the pandemic was, all trial and error, like everybody, right? So I did a couple things happened. At first, after I was sick of making sourdough bread, I turned on my Facebook Live and thought, I'm going to give this a whirl. And what I found out was that people who had been following me, it's not like I have millions of fans. I don't. Like, I'm a folk singer songwriter, so I probably have I have 15,000 followers on my Facebook page, right? Like, it's good. It's not bonkers. But these people came there because they'd been to my live shows. Pandemic hits. What I found is they were really interested in seeing a few Facebook live shows, and I set up a donate button. People could use the PayPal to donate or send me an e-transfer, and it was it was good. It was really good, and it sustained me for quite a long time. Of course, though, like everyone experienced, that plateaued and then went the way of the dodo because people just got sick of streaming. Luckily, I don't know what your state or your city was like. But up here, I live in Saskatchewan. We had probably, wasn't loose, but we had this sort of loophole in our pandemic restrictions where you could have gatherings of 30 people in a backyard. And the first thing I thought was house concert. And so I did not the first summer, but the next 2 summers, I did 60 backyard concerts a summer, and people were itching to go to these things because there were no concerts. And so I kind of made some lemonade out of lemons, and honestly, it was on my Facebook page. I was like, I'm considering doing these backyard shows. Anybody interested? And I was bombarded with messages, and it was really incredible. So I served this up in that my fans saved me. Like, they really did. All these people who hosted these shows were fans. All these people who looked at my online, my streaming Facebook Live things, who donated, they were fans. And they saw this person, they'd kind of gravitated to a song or two of mine, kind of going back to, we talked about crafting songs. And they thought, I'm going to give this guy a few bucks, And it literally helped me pull through the pandemic, to the point where, the other part of your question, did you write many songs during the pandemic? I was so busy, I hardly wrote songs during the pandemic. It was really weird.
Did you ever feel, and Judith, did you have any follow-up questions to that or anything? You're on mute.
Yes, I was just wondering, what did he learn about since social media was profitable for you? Is that something that can you use that? Kind of.
Yeah, I've not since COVID has kind of mostly gone away. I've not been monetizing my live streams, but I've been thinking about that question, I don't have an answer to it yet. So you ask a question that is literally bumbling around my head. We're on the very same plane here. I think what I could do is maybe once or twice a year. I think I could do a ticketed online concert either on my own or through we have this thing in Canada called Side Door Access. They might be in the States too. And do that. Stephen Page, formerly of the Bare Naked Ladies, is probably the Canadian case study who in the pandemic, like, just somehow made it all work like ridiculously well. And like, I don't know the exact number, but if you took a look at one of his Zoom concert things and what people were paying to get that ticket, he literally made hundreds of thousands of dollars in the pandemic. Like, I did it, just to clarify, but like, it was insane. So like, people who really did it, and I think he's still able to do that, to answer your question, you know. So it is possible to parlay that pandemic streaming audience into something more long term now. I think probably each person's following has a different level of how much they're still streaming. I don't know, right? That's probably kind of specific to the artist.
Okay, well, we'll be watching to see what happens with you with that.
Me too, thanks.
Thank you.
Did you ever have times coming up, Jeffrey, where you felt discouraged?
Times coming, yeah, during the pandemic, or just in general?
Just like starting your career and I mean, I think I know the answer that you're probably going to say yes, but can you think of the times that when you felt that? Because I think those are the times where people give up, right?
Yeah.
Those are the times where someone says, you know what, I gave it a shot. This isn't working. What did that look like for you?
It's a great question, and there were tons of them. Like, I think, and I've said this before, and you reminded me of this, like, and I'm kind of making up a statistic because 62.3% of statistics are made up in the moment. But I bet the ratio is 9 no's for every yes in the music business. And like, I'm not joking. It's maybe 2 to 8, but it's something like that. And so one thing I have developed over time because of this is a pretty thick skin. But even so, there are still disappointments, and there always will be. Like, you pour your heart and soul into these songs, and that's what you're pushing out to people to say, what do you think? Will you book me? And when someone says, yeah, I'll pass, let's face it, it's like they're passing on your soul. And that doesn't feel good. And I felt that intensely at the start when I, you know, when I sort of had proven in a small center, maybe a small city or something, and say, hey, look, I'm doing these shows. And over time, a few more people are coming over time. And then to reach out to the local festival booker, and they're like, yeah, no. And you're just like, that sucks. Like, it's really horrible, you know? Or even, you know, you've got a song that you think is perfectly suited to what a music supervisor is placing. And it's really maybe even kind of similar to other stuff you see them regularly placing in a show, and then they pass. And they don't tell you why. And like, you're rarely told why in this business. Like, why? Like, if they say yes, you can kind of guess why. Like, they like it. But you never know why there's a no. I've tried to, what I try to gravitate to with a no, because obviously I still get them too, is and I wish I could say I thought of this. I didn't. Someone told me this. And if you get a no, treat it as a no, comma, not right now. It might not mean no forever. And it actually probably is the case. No, not right now. You reach out to a festival you want to play. No, like, you get a no. But it could be, no, not right now. I actually just booked someone just like you. You know, in the parentheses might be, I've actually been following you for a while. I know what you do. Next year might be great. They never tell you that. They're just like, nope, they're busy people. So yeah.
Another question in the chat, Louisa says, do you have songs that you write that are really more for yourself and you don't think an audience would want to hear them?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Lots of them. And there's a phrase that I heard a Canadian songwriter named Catherine McClellan, who's in Prince Edward Island. I heard her say this, and she describes those songs as ones that just aren't meant for public spaces. And I think that's so true. You know, I write some as like a therapy. My mom passed away 4 years and 3 months ago, and I wrote a lot. I wrote so many songs to work on the grief that I could sing 2 concerts of grieving songs, which nobody would want to hear. So like they're for me, and they worked really well, and I sing them for myself at my piano quite frequently.
Kind of along those lines, do you find yourself then trying to write to what you think your audience wants? Does that affect your creativity in that way as well?
Yeah, so the answer would be sometimes. Like if I'm always revising my set list for shows or festivals, etc. And recently I was like, you know what? I need a really good up-tempo song in my second set. And I'm kind of sick of the one I've been putting there. I need a new up-tempo song. And and sort of knowing that in the back of my head, it when you get a song idea, sometimes those ideas we've all had them. Some ideas can kind of go anyway when you're writing them. You're like, is this a ballad? Is this up-tempo? Whatever. It helps me push it into, let's try this as an up-tempo song, Also, subject wise, like I come from a really small town in rural Canada, and I'm aware that quite a few people in my shows are also either rural or formerly rural people, which helped me write a song that I released a few years ago called "One Foot on Main Street," and it's literally about being from a small town, and it goes over like wildfire at shows because it plays really to the audience. Now, do I do that with all my songs? Absolutely not. Like I have some that are just things that I'm feeling that I end up thinking this is just a good song, and I hope this connects. And sometimes that's even more fun because I've not tried to tailor it to the audience. It's a song that I think is good, and then it kind of leaves me with a bit of anxiousness about each night, like, is this going to work? So sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Awesome. Jay, you had another question?
I did. Thank you, Chad. So on this line of questions, Jeffrey, I'm kind of curious, you being a piano player and largely a solo performer, do you find yourself ever putting together projects that you don't necessarily intend to perform or may develop for someone else? For example, with all of the MIDI tools we have today to revoice instruments, orchestral, whatever, and your interest in connecting, your draw to connect. I'm wondering if you ever do, like, say, show tunes, for example. Like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling kind of showy tonight. I'm gonna write this. I'm gonna keep working on this project that it's the fourth act now of this play that I've been working on, and you just kind of like hip pocket it, just because that's something that just you get your teeth into, and you go back to your own projects. But I'm wondering, like, how often you find yourself developing because you don't want to not use that conduit to create because it struck you, but at the same time, it's not necessarily for you to deliver.
I don't. I mean, it's tricky. I've done some projects that aren't like my singer-songwriter piano shows. Where I have to shut this blind. It's driving me crazy. So it's like this string. I don't know if I've got the right thing here, but I think I did. I wrote 5 years ago. I wrote songs for a musical. Funny you should mention show tunes. Now, and it was a musical I was not performing in. A playwright had asked to use a couple songs of mine, my existing songs, in this musical, and then and I said yes. And then once the musical got going, she said, well, what would you be able to write one on that might fit this scene? And it sort of turned into a whole bunch of songs for this musical, most of which I will never perform myself. But it was a wonderful writing challenge. I think it really helped me grow as a writer, which is why I was really into doing it. So yeah, that was one. I don't like. I guess one of the, and maybe related to this, is one of the ways I approach co-writes. I used to really dive into a co-write thinking this must be something that I will sometime sing, right? And then what I've realized, I think I've sort of chilled out a bit over time, and it's just that if you're in a co-write with someone and a song is emerging that might be something that I don't think I'm going to sing, maybe it's a song we'll pitch to somebody, So I will be very interested in finishing it, working on it, developing it, because I'll learn something from the co-writer in the process. I'll probably learn something about myself. I'm for sure going to write something I never would have written on my own, and maybe I'll pitch it to somebody, you know. So hopefully that sort of answers it a bit.
It really does. It really does. And in that same vein, kind of outside of your normal space of performing just yourself, you were speaking earlier about working with other people at music festivals to perhaps get a slot. And I'm wondering how you tend to find yourself going about that. Do you look at the sheets like, hey, these people are performing, let's see who's performing the same vein, or like, what's your process on that?
That's exactly what I do. I focus on festivals where I see people not exactly like me, but like kind of like me getting programmed, and I focus my outreach there. That's exactly it.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Another question in the chat is, do you use a DAW or recording software to record, or do you just record with live musicians? Do you record yourself, or are you going into a studio most of the time?
I do work tapes and really good demos on my own, but I've done all my recording with a producer.
Okay.
Uh, always. And one thing I've done, which I don't know if it's just, I think it's a bit different, is each time I've made a record, it's always been a different producer. I've had, and I've really enjoyed all the producers I've worked with, but I tend to change it each time.
Interesting.
Part of it, maybe it's because my attention span is kind of short, and I like to have constant change. But I do like to slightly change the sonics each time. And I've found that my listeners enjoy it too.
Cool. Juju asked, what are your goals? Do you have anything on the growth kind of vision board at this point? I mean, obviously you want to keep making money, but you know, what are some of the goals that you have now?
Oh, that's like the $1 million question. My God. What are my goals? You know, I always said all I wanted out of this, going back to the very first chat we had, for first question, was my goal was to have making music, so writing it, recording it, touring it, be my living. That was the dream. The dream kind of came true, and I was actually telling this to a friend's grandmother not long ago, and she was a career piano player, and she looked at me and said, I said, yeah, it's like my dreams come true, and she said, time to get a new dream. but so I think my goal is to keep doing that, but I think broaden the experiences, and you know, sort of hope that as more people, and of course, like, this is a relative number, but as slowly over time, more people are hearing my songs, I hope that different co-writes emerge. I hope that different performing opportunities emerge, different, you know, yeah, just different opportunities in general emerge, different touring opportunities, and so a couple examples on that is I had a commission to write a song from this is interesting to Canadians, maybe not Americans, but to write a song to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III. I got commissioned by the Lieutenant Governor of our province to write a song just for my province to mark the coronation. So it's like, would you write a song to celebrate the new king? And I was like, man, that is really hard, because when you really think about the practicality of this, you're celebrating something that kind of hasn't happened yet. Like you're like, yeah, hey, congrats, king. You've not kinged yet, but here's a song about it. Like it's so I'm not diminishing it. Like he's a very good man, but like he's not done anything yet. So how do you celebrate that in a song, you know? So I had to, you know, but I was grateful for the opportunity. Like 17 years ago, I would not have got that call. But with persistence and, like, you know, following my, you know, like, you know, keeping going, like Sylvia Tyson said, over time, more people have sort of heard about what I'm doing, and it was a really interesting opportunity to get, you know. Similarly, like, but on a tour front, there's an artist in Canada that I really enjoy. His name is Royal Wood. He's a pianist and guitar player and singer-songwriter. He's touring with Bonnie Raitt very soon. He's wonderful. He and I are going to be doing a tour in early 2024 of theaters in Western Canada, and it'll be, for me, it's kind of a big deal. For him, I think it's less of a big deal. He's done this type of thing before, but for me to get invited along, it's sort of a new thing I've never done, you know. And again, 17 years ago, it never would have happened. But if I try, I can't even put my finger on a thing that made this happen. You know, I think it's simply a factor of keeping at it, having just more people over time hear what I do, and somewhere along the way, the right person heard something, and it sort of led to this tour. So yeah, so to answer the question about the goal, I just hope more of that kind of new opportunity keeps arising.
Awesome. In the touring world, and maybe you can expand on this too. I was on the booking end when I lived in South Dakota. I was on. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Corn Palace, but in my hometown there is they call it the world's only Corn Palace, which is basically an arena that has corn murals on the outside. Because you know we grow so much corn in South Dakota that you can waste the corn and put it on the building. That was the idea of it. But we used to book different acts, and there were different like tiers of acts. You know, you'd have more of the more local tier, then you'd have kind of a mid-level tier, and then you'd start getting into these like superstar tiers where we could never afford them, right? But is that kind of what you're talking about as well, Jeffrey, is kind of moving up the tiers in the touring world, or does that make any sense to you, or was that just Corn Palace speak?
First of all, I want to play the Corn Palace.
Yes,
but
you should.
I should. Why not? But yeah, I think what you're saying is exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, so for example, I haven't done a lot of performing in America, like in the USA. I've done a little bit, but not a ton, mostly because the visa that Canadian musicians need to get down there is like bonkers. But anyway, that's a whole separate chat. But I did recently do some shows in Florida through this thing called the Listening Room. And the Listening Room, if any of you are singer-songwriters, you should check it out. It's really neat. I did this showcase down there and then did some house concerts in Florida. And so I never played Florida. I didn't know if my music would resonate. I didn't know what I was getting into. But I went down there and played, you know, a backyard, a living room, a church, and then the showcase. And honestly, it was really fascinating. I mean, I met wonderful people. I learned that Florida is a wonderful place. It was in St. Petersburg, or centered around that area. And I got enough people, like there were enough people at these house concerts and things listening that I have probably about, you know, I'll ask like 8. I got about 8 house concerts I can go back and do in early 2024. And that's a good little tour. I'm going to reach out and set up a few more, but I can have about a week and a half of shows if I go back to Florida. So, you know, in Western Canada, where I've played way more, I'll be doing this tour in early 2024 of soft seat theaters, you know, 300, 400, 500 seat theaters. In Florida, it'll be living rooms, perfectly fine with me. I think it's really wonderful, you know? You got to start somewhere no matter where you're playing. So yeah. And hopefully over time, to your point, Chad, maybe it'll grow in Florida too, but only time will tell.
Pierre asked, where will we be able to hear the King Charles song? Is there a place where we'll be able to hear that?
Well, so yes, after all this writing I did recently, I'm going to be recording a new record in July or August, and the King Charles song is going to end up on the record. And it's interesting. It kind of links to a question that someone asked before about, you know, tailoring things to your audience and taking inspiration, etc. But like, I turned the song into a song for the people, partly because I think it's the kind of guy he is. He sees himself as a practical, community-minded person. I mean, whatever, people can debate that, but that's what he sees himself as. And I thought, well, that's kind of, so then like, I think he realizes he's trying to set an example. He wants people to be good people. So I wrote a song as a motivator, as a call to action for the people, strangely as a song for the king, right? But it kind of comes across as this folk, almost like it's almost a bit like Rise Up-ish, but it's not. But I played it for a few folkies and they love it, you know? So it's gonna end up on my record. So once the record's out, it'll be on there, and it's called Better Than What We Found.
Cool title. Do you have any experience with songwriting contests? Is that anything you ever dip your foot into?
I've entered a few. I've even entered a few recently. I don't do a lot of it because I've just never, the few that I've done well in, I've never really seen much come out of it. I mean, really what it is I think what you can get if you get an honorable mention or a top 10 or whatever, it's something really cool for your bio or your resume. It is quite cool. People love to hear about that stuff. Do they really build your careers? I'm not sure. Like there's an American folk songwriter who I really like. His name's Ellis Paul. And I think he won the international songwriting competition. He did really well. And this song is called "I Ain't No Jesus," and it's a really good song. And like I looked at it on Spotify one day, and I was like, relatively speaking, not a lot of people have went and listened to this song, even after he had this incredibly high placing in the contest. And not that Spotify is the be all and end all at all, but I would have hoped for his sake, because it's such a good song, that more people would have went and found it because of this really high profile song contest, but they didn't. So that's just one example. I mean, do I still enter them though? I do, maybe 2 a year. I kind of pick ones that I think I might fit into or something. And I guess probably the relevant follow-up question would be, why do I do it? Probably I'm looking for something new in my bio. I don't know. Why am I doing it?
Well, I mean, if you win a cash prize or something, like
Yeah.
take the cash.
Like a car. Maybe I'd win a performance at the Corn Palace. I don't know.
Yes. I might be able to pull some strings and make that happen. That sounds like a joke though, but we booked like Leanne Rhymes. Like we had Big and Rich back in the day.
What?
Like, I mean, we have Corn Palace has some money, or they used to anyway, back when I was there, but
Amazing. I'm Googling the Corn Palace when this is done. By the
do
way.
it. That's my hometown.
Okay.
No, so members of At Home Songwriting, so Chuck Thomas won one of the lyric contests for American Songwriter magazine.
Yes.
So he won like a microphone and a guitar, and then they used him in their ads for like months. And I think it was good PR for him.
Yeah.
Did it expand his music career? Not really.
That's a really good one, and that's one, to be specific, I've entered that one a couple times. No, I have not won. But I also, like, you can get some feedback. You can then go in and see what the winner's lyrics. You can kind of, if you're really open with yourself, you can see how you measure up against the winner. Like, there's something about that one that I think it feels really objective and a really high bar. I think everything's good about that one, and it's super cheap to enter.
And then Sarah Peterson, who's been a guest on At Home Songwriting, she was or was, I don't know what the status is right now, but she was a finalist in the John Lennon songwriting contest. So people really do like move up. It's to be seen what kind of happens with that. But yeah, we've got some people right here in the group that have had some success with it. I think the ones that are more well known are probably a little bit less scammy than some of them.
Mm-hmm.
So try to research, because some of them are really just taking people's money. They're selling the dream and taking the money, But if they have legit sponsors, and I think if they have legit judges, like American Songwriter, I think the John Lennon contest, I think the International Song contests, I think those are legit. I was a finalist actually in one that was for a publishing company in Nashville. I think they called it the Music City or something. This was probably 4 years ago. I was like a semi-finalist on 2 of my songs actually. And I think I won my entrance fee back, which I was like, hey, $25, I'll take it, So
the place or the win or whatever, like it's not worth less. Like, it actually is really, it's a great thing to have if you're pitching yourself out to say, it catches the eye of festival workers, it catches the eye of venue bookers, it catches the eye, it's a thing, because with our bios, it's a great segue towards bios. Like, with our bios, we're trying to give people who've never heard of us or who know a little bit about us in a very brief time, a bit of info as to why they should take notice. And I think it's one of those things that says to people, here's why you should take notice.
Yep. And anything like that where you can get someone else's opinion, it adds credibility.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jeffrey, I know that we've taken about an hour of your time here, so definitely want to be conscious of that. Thank you so much for joining us. Are there any last minute questions that anybody might have for Jeffrey before we wrap up today?
I just have a comment. Jeffrey, are you a Riders fan?
You know what? I'm actually the worst Saskatchewan person ever, so I don't follow football. Embarrassing,
Okay, that's
embarrassing.
okay. I was going to say go Bombers, but that's okay.
I know enough.
Keep doing what you're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Winnipeg in November. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple questions. It looks like Adam. What did you have?
Just real quick, Jeffrey, thanks. The house parties, besides COVID and people craving seeing live shows, how did that explode for you? How is that a thing?
You know what? That I'm glad you touched back on this, because back to your first question about starting out and all that business. Really, 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 house concerts are such a great way to build what I call fierce fans fast. And so the first invite I got to do a house concert was probably 16 years ago. And this woman reached out to me, her woman and her husband, and they said, "Hey, do you play house concerts?" And I didn't even know what they were. And I said, "Oh yeah, of course I do." And I went and played this house concert, and I had no idea what I was getting into. And what I found over time, and I'm willing, and I think many people who do house concerts find this, is that a house show will spawn a house show. Someone in that room, and it might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week or even the next month, next year, or whatever, someone's going to eventually book you for something. It will happen. House concerts are amazing for that. Great opportunities to sell merch too. People are up close. They experience something in a very intimate way. They'll buy a CD, they'll buy a vinyl, even if they don't have a record player. It's quite amazing. How did they explode? I'm not sure they really exploded during the pandemic, because people just, frankly, I think people needed something, and they needed an experience to get together, because they'd been deprived of that, and it was the perfect excuse to gather. But if there was no pandemic, I think I did one, and then over time I kept sort of doing them, and I still do them, even though I can play some larger venues. There's places where I haven't played a lot. I'll still seek out house concerts, and you can Google a city you're going to and stick in house concert in the search. You'll find them, and do check out that listening room thing I mentioned, because it's like a network of house concerts across North America, mostly in the US.
Wow, thank
Also,
you.
also, as I have a frog in my throat, there's the singer-songwriter challenge group that's on Facebook that I'm not, I don't run it, but there's a lot of people. They have sometimes done house concerts at each other's places. Like, other songwriters will host, and then they'll charge like a small ticket fee, and then they'll sell merch and stuff. Like, I went to one in a songwriter's backyard, who I also had on my YouTube channel, Katie Tessman. She had a concert in her backyard last summer, and I think it was like $15, and like, you brought your lawn chair and you sat in the backyard, and it was so fun. And there were probably, I don't know, 30, 40 people. And yeah, it was like a memorable gig, right? Like, if you just went to a theater, or you just went to somewhere normal, quote unquote normal, but like, you wouldn't remember it the same. But yeah, Adam, maybe it's a thing when you're outside of New York City, but house concerts are a big thing when you get out into the boonies.
It's not happening here. Yeah, exactly.
But Adam, one more comment on that. Like, I remember doing this show, like, say, I'm going to say 14 years ago, in this place in Canada called Sudbury, and it was in this place called the Fromagerie, like this cheese place. And there were not a lot of people there. There were like, I bet there were 9. And I did this show, and I kind of thought, well, that was that. Whatever. Never get that night back. Well, lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, I get a message on my website from this gal who was there that night with her dad. So this gal is getting married in Ontario this summer, and she's decided it's a small wedding, 50 people. She's doing a house concert in the yard. And she asked if I would come and play a house concert. And and it's crazy how these things go, right? It's like 14 years later. So anyway, I was really motivated by that. I reinvigorated,
Yeah, I mean, you never know. It's not about the number of people that are there, you know? Awesome. Jay.
Oh, hi. So I actually just wanted to pop in real quick and say thanks so much, Jeffrey. I really appreciate the information you shared. I've learned a lot, had a lot to really kind of just kind of process and think through. And so I actually decided to go ahead and follow you on Twitter. so that I can kind of see some of the things that inform your life as you continue songwriting. And maybe I'll stumble upon my own version of Saskatchewan's T-Rex Discovery Center to inform my songwriting in the near future. But I really wish you the best in this coming year of songwriting and into the future.
Thank you very much. It's been great chatting with you and everybody. I love this.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for attending, and Jeffrey, especially, thank you for hopping on. Sorry about the time zone. I thought I knew you were in Central. I didn't know you guys didn't change like we do, but
No, as soon as you sent that email, I was like, oh God, there's two centrals. Like I encountered this 4 years ago. Anyway, my fault. Whatever. It
awesome.
worked.
Well, again, thank you so much, and we can't wait to hear the new album and the new music that you're working on. So that'll be great.
Thanks for having me again. This was really, really, really good. And good luck to everybody doing everything that you do. Keep writing and getting, and those of you who are performing your tunes, go do it. Go do it.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Well,
Jeffrey.
yeah, Jeffrey, you can go ahead and drop off, and if everybody else wants to kind of hang out for a little bit, we can kind of debrief and all that good stuff. But thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.